Thank you very much, and it's great to be with you. I live in London now, and it's always great to get an opportunity to come back to Africa. It still does feel like home, even though I landed just a few hours ago and rushed up through the Highveld to get here. It's wonderful to be with you this afternoon. As you've heard, we're going to be talking about some of the forces that are shaping the world of work, and not just work, but the world around us. I'm a futurist, I suppose, is the one label that I would put on my business card, but not the type of futurist that can tell you what the price of oil will be on Christmas Day 2022. I mean, if I could do that, I wouldn't do this for a living. I'm not a crystal ball gazer. In fact, if I could sum up in one picture what I do, it's this: trying to understand what's going to happen in the next few years, just lifting the horizon just a little bit, to look at the next 5 to 10 years at the most, and ask what's about to change. That's why we need to stop every now and again, because we do live right now in 2012 in probably the most complex, turbulent and fast-moving world that any of us have ever experienced. The economic downturn, which has hit many parts of the world, not all parts, but many parts of the world, I believe is not just an economic crisis. It's not just a financial issue. That right now in the world, bigger and other things are changing as well. There are political changes taking place, social changes taking place, personal changes taking place. And even if we could wave a magic wand here today and get the economy flying again and the whole world moving in the right financial direction, I still think that we would discover that a lot has changed. To put it another way, I'm getting very nervous for many of my clients who say things like, I can't wait for things to get back to normal. And I just wish things would go back to the way they were a few years ago, when we knew how to do business, we knew how to make a lot of money. I wish it would all go back to that. If there's any message, a single message out of my session now, it's that isn't going to happen. The world is shifting under our feet. We are living in remarkable times. And that's why I like the theme of your conference. Because this concept of a 0 point is this concept of everything that's happened up until now is almost, if you like, just dress rehearsal. Now we get to choose the future. And at one level, everything is open. All possibilities are open to us, and it's up to us to make those choices and to step boldly into that future. I think the late Peter Drucker, management guru, got it exactly right with this quote, that the greatest danger we face in times of turbulence, and let's face it, we're in times of turbulence right now, but the greatest danger is actually not the turbulence itself. There are a number of reasons for that, but two in particular. The first is, if you take the short-term mindset that you need in order to survive a turbulent time, that mindset, that short-termism, can quickly become a habit. It can quickly stop you developing your staff. It can quickly stop you thinking strategically. It can quickly stop you taking the big, bold risks that companies like yours need to take in order to be successful, because you're just focused on dealing with the turbulence. Sure, you need to. You need to survive difficult times, but don't make it a habit. You need to learn to think big. And the second reason is because I think the turbulence we're in at the moment is not just a little blip. I think something bigger is going on. And we need to realize, therefore, that if there's a new era about to dawn in the world, then maybe all of the things that made us successful over the last few decades, all the things that have built your company into the big, bold brand that it is now, well, maybe some of those things are going to have to be left as part of history. Remembered fondly. No mistakes, we've done a great job. But maybe now is that 0 point, that time to make a new and bold direction in a different way. Let me put it this way. Maybe you need to think of yourself like these two fishermen. Many of you are technically brilliant at what you do, and your company is known for its technical expertise in everything that it does. Maybe you're like these fishermen. Some of you are so good at what you do, you can do it half asleep. But you don't necessarily look around you to see big, unprecedented, unexpected events. Then you read a newspaper headline, you see the chaos in the markets. You've got to wake your team up and tell them something's changing. You've got to get the engine going because it hasn't gone for a while. And unfortunately, sometimes you have to bail out. Hopefully that won't happen to you. So, I'd like to suggest to you that there are 5 forces that you should be keeping an eye on. There's a lot going on in the world. There's a lot to think about as a leader who's wanting to think strategically. But I'd like to suggest that there are 5 things you should be concentrating on more than anything else. These are not the only 5 things going on in the world, but I think these 5 forces will account for about 80% of the change, of the disruption that you are likely to experience over the next few years. Disruption often has a negative connotation, and I don't only mean it negatively. Disruption simply means unprecedented change at a huge level. And that brings opportunities as well as threats. So I hope this will be an uplifting view of these 5 forces as well, not just a scary one, but it will be scary as well. We've called these the TIDES of change. I freely acknowledge that this acronym may even in fact be cheesy, but I hope it sticks. That's the point. And that you can take it back to the office, but I'll talk about that more at the end. We've got 5 forces. The first one is T. I'm looking for a force that is a huge, significant force that could change the world. What would the T stand for? Technology. Sorry, no prizes. It's too easy. But you're absolutely right. Technology has been driving our lives and changes in our lives for all of our lives. Since at least the 1960s, the power of computers has been doubling every 18 months. But just recently, and by that I mean just in the last few years, there have been significant advances in computing. It's almost as if the doubling wasn't noticed. You know, that started off as a little microscopic computer, the tiny little processing power with tiny little bandwidth, and then it doubled, and then it doubled, and then it doubled, and then it doubled. You know, if you're trying to fill a jar with something, and every day you double how much liquid is in that jar, the day before the jar is fully full, it will be half empty. Because sometimes that logarithmic growth just suddenly erupts onto your vision, and you suddenly see, wow, where did that come from? And I think that's just what's happened in the last few years around advances in computing power, bandwidth, processing speed, storage capacity. It's still doubling and will continue to double for at least the next 15 years as far as we can see. Just make this a bit real for you. There's Steve Jobs with the first iPad. Now, I know that the relaunches of Apple products are slightly delayed in South Africa. So thinking internationally, when was the first iPad launched? How many years ago? 3, 4, 2? Would it surprise you to know that it wasn't even 2 years ago? That was the 1st of April 2010 when Steve Jobs launched iPads, tablet computers. How many of you have got an iPad or a tablet or an equivalent? Like that. And the world is changed. That's how fast technology change is moving at the moment. So if you haven't yet incorporated iPads into the Tiger strategy, don't feel that you're behind. It's not 2 years yet. And yet feel that you are very behind because it's already 2 years. That's where we find ourselves with technology. And because of that, different fields of interest, different fields of science and engineering and technology are hugely, right now, influenced. Some people have in their minds that we are reaching the peak of the technology age. I'd like to suggest to you, we haven't even started yet. We've only just got the technology we need to match our imaginations. Now it gets interesting. So now, over the next 5 years, we will see things like personalized medication. Our ability to sequence your DNA at about 1,000 rand in less than 6 hours, that will be available within the next 3 years, which means you can go to your doctor and he doesn't have to prescribe a one-size-fits-all antibiotic. You can know precisely what medicine will work for you and have it manufactured overnight. Robotics is going to be huge news, especially medical robotics. I'm pretty convinced that the first person to live to 150 years old is already alive. Now, given what you guys are going to eat and drink in the next 3 days, it's not you. Yeah? But it might be your kids. It might be your kids. But I'm serious about that, by the way. Life expectancy has doubled in my grandmother's time. She's 97 years old this year, still alive. And when she was born, her life expectancy was 47. Life expectancy right now is increasing by 1 day every week. That's how quickly we are developing our ability to live longer. And part of that, and I think this is a message for you at Tiger Brands, is people are not just looking for health foods anymore. In the next few years, they will start to look for smart foods. Our ability to fortify foods, our ability to use the food that we put in our bodies as part of this process of keeping ourselves healthy and understanding how this machine of ours works. And if I were in your company, I would certainly be putting a lot of money and resource into that line. And I know that you do. And you can see the other things there, alternative energies. That's an ant holding a microprocessor. That's nanotechnology. And that little machine at the end there is a 3D printer. And if you haven't heard of it or seen it, do a Google search and blow your brain completely. As we can now print out 3D objects, everything from wine glasses to car doors. The most remarkable thing coming into your kitchen in the next decade. But that's the technology side, and I know you have some great technologists in the firm. That's not my area of specialty, and that's for the scientists and for the clever buds. But that's the technology side. There's another reason that technology is going where it's going, and that's these young people. Not these 4 young people in particular, but young people who were born in 1989. That's what this image is about. 1989, it was an amazing year in history. It was the year that the Berlin Wall came down. It was the year of Tiananmen Square in China. It was the year the first Ayatollah died in Iran. People thought there would be another revolution. It was the year that communism was banned in Russia. Who would have thought? And the year that the whole of Eastern Europe opened up. Just a few weeks into 1990, Nelson Mandela was released from jail, and South Africa joined the 1989 revolution that went around the world. Those were political and in some cases economic issues. But 2 other things happened in 1989 that make it important. The first is that Daniel Radcliffe, the actor who plays Harry Potter, was born. My daughters think that's it. That makes it the most important year in history. But more important than that, HTML, which is the language that is what websites are written in, was invented, designed, created in 1989 by Tim Berners-Lee at CERN. So, in other words, the internet as you know it, websites as you know them, were also born in 1989. And so were these 4 young people. And they started working for you last year. These young people are truly the first people born in the digital age. We could call them, if you like, digital natives. There may be 1 or 2 of them in the room, but I think all of us in the room are older than this. We are digital immigrants. We may know how to speak digital, but it's a second or a third, or for some of you, a 12th language. I realize there are a few digital dinosaurs in the room as well. But these digital natives, the reason I think this is my favorite picture in my presentation is because these 4 young people are actually sending SMSs to each other. In fact, they might even be in relationships. They're not doing this because they are lazy, or because they are stupid, or because they have no social skills. They have the most remarkable digital social skills. They are doing that because that's their choice. That's how they choose to engage with each other and with the world. And I don't think that our companies are anywhere near ready for them, as either staff or customers. You see, we're changing how we engage with information, and we're being driven by technology, and we're being driven by a younger generation. Let me make this more practical for you. You see, we're changing where we find information. These young people find information everywhere. I found this out a while ago when I took my 3 daughters to a shopping mall. I have three daughters, 12, 10, and 6. I mean, I thought we should give them names, but my wife said it's the digital age, numbers are fine. Anyway, we were off at the mall, and a piece of music came on, as it does. I had never heard this song, didn't recognize the artist or anything, but I really liked it. So I said what any 41-year-old would say. I wonder what that is. I mean, you do that all the time. You're driving past a building, you look, oh, I wonder what that is. You drive past a monument, oh, I wonder what that is. You see a car driving past, I don't never, what was that? You don't expect an answer, because nobody knows everything, it's just a question. But my daughters don't live in that world. My 12-year-old, Amy, she said, oh, Dad, she grabbed my iPhone, pressed a few buttons, and held it up in the air. I later discovered, and now really enjoy it, a little app that had been loaded on my phone called SoundHound. Other options are available, Shazam being the other big one, I think. She recorded 20 seconds of that song. And then, even if you know SoundHound and Shazam, and many of you, I'm seeing you nodding, you do. By the way, for those of you who have a BlackBerry, sorry you don't have a real smartphone, there are these things called apps. You can load them on your phone. They make them smarter. Anyway, you'll one day coming to your BlackBerries. Anyway, listen to what happens, and I defy you to understand it. That 20-second soundbite gets uploaded to the International Music Database, which has, listen to this, a copy of every single version of every single song ever recorded. That 20-second soundbite gets matched across that whole database. In less than 5 seconds, it finds the song and downloads the information to your phone. Now, I wasn't fast enough that day to take a photograph of my screen, so this is a well-known song by Robbie Williams, and just to show that I'm not a fully paid-up member of the Apple cult, I put it in a Samsung folder, just to show you that other options are available. Why you would use a Samsung, I don't know. But anyway, there it is. Angels by Robbie Williams. This is the album it comes from. Here are links to YouTube videos of that song being performed live in action. Just because the app was designed in Japan, it includes all the lyrics so that you can immediately sing along. It then allows you to buy, because all of this is for free, right? So how do they make their money? Well, they make commission on the songs you choose to buy. One click, bang, you've bought it. And other songs like it. Before that song had finished playing, not only did I know who it was that was singing it and what album it was from, I owned the song. And 12 others like it. Brilliant. And my daughters think that's normal. That's the world they live in. They live in a world where there are no mysteries. There are no questions, there are no hypothetical questions. They go into a shop and they see a product, they want to know more about it. They don't call a salesperson over. They just take a photograph of the barcode and do precisely the same thing with that. And when they come to any of the products that you put on their shelves, and they want to know, what is the nutritional value of this? What's the ethical supply chain like behind this? They don't want to have to read the box. They want to do it this way. They want this information to be customized for them. They want to have access to everything that anyone has ever and could ever know about the products that they're seeing in front of them. More than that, they want to be able to interact with their friends and ask questions and give information about all of those products as well. That's what social media is about. Some of you don't like social media because you think it's just about trying to find out what Lady Gaga had for breakfast. And who cares? And I agree with you. But social media, Facebook and YouTube and Twitter and LinkedIn, is not just about that. Sure, there are teenage toy uses of social media. But this new generation sees social media as an intensely human way to do intensely human things, to connect, to contribute, to be engaged, to be involved. I don't know what your social media policies are, but there are too many companies in the world that block access to Facebook and social media, that treat Facebook and Twitter as if they were some other new marketing channel to just shout at your customers. You are completely misunderstanding the revolution that's taking place around you. As information now becomes part of the everyday life of young people and their parents, and their grandparents, as we all get to live in this new technologically driven digital age. We're not only changing where we find information, we're also changing how we visually see it. Very simply, we call this augmented reality. This is our ability to take all of the data that exists in the world and to see that data on a screen in front of us. Now, there's nothing special or magical about this. If you've got a sat-nav or a GPS in your car, that's augmented reality. There's the real road. Here's a little screen telling you the name of the road and where to turn. Now, just imagine you could carry that around in your pocket. Well, that's what many of these augmented reality apps do. That's my favorite one. That's my phone in London with the augmented reality app called Nearest Tube, the underground system in London. I put in the address I want to go to in London, and that little red line appears, and all I have to do is walk through the streets of London following the red line. It takes me to the nearest tube station, tells me which train to catch, and when I get off the other side, helps me complete the journey. Now, the only downside of doing that, just by the way, because I know some of you are in the marketing side, you can see that as I walk past stores, it picks up location-based data in terms of advertising, specials, and so on. And you tell me why you would advertise on TV when you can advertise like that. Now, if we're all walking through London like this, we're going to walk into people. So it's going to be better to put this stuff, instead of having it on your phone, to put it inside your glasses. And that's coming in about 4 or 5 years' time. In about 10 years' time, it will be directly in your contact lenses with all of this data beamed directly onto your retina, which will be wonderful at conferences like this. No more name tags around our necks, because we can walk into a room and instantly do facial recognition on everybody, download the data that you've made publicly available, and have decent conversations, which is just, by the way, how salespeople get their power back. Because salespeople are pretty scared of my daughters at the moment because they know everything there is to know about a product. But what a salesperson with this technology has is the ability, when you walk into the shop, to know that for the last 4 years, you've come to my shop in the last week of January and you've bought a present for an elderly lady, possibly a mother. Check. Yes, mother's birthday is on the 2nd of February. I walk over to you now and I say, I see the last 4 years you bought these things for your mother, right? Yes? Well, we can complete the set this year. Do you know we've got the 5th one? Now that's impressive. And that's what my daughters expect. That's normal. How much information do you provide How much interaction are you encouraging with your customers, and in some of your cases, your customers' customers? This is indeed a brave new world. We're changing where we store information. I'm not going to talk about this today, but it's cloud computing, where we put our information, and we're also changing how we access information. Very simply, what I mean is all of the data that could be available should be available all the time, everywhere, on any device, for everybody, everywhere. Other than that, there's not much more to do for the IT department this year. If we do all of that, well, there's huge implications for our businesses. But that's your task, not mine. I'm not here as a consultant today to tell you what to do. I'm here to help you think about what might be coming. So technology. I wonder, as you think about it, how is this new world? You might think, well, I'm a product manager, or I'm in the factory, or I'm in distribution. This doesn't affect me. This is just about information. Well, hopefully I've shown you how it could affect you. And hopefully you will be thinking even internally how this affects you as a team. How much information flows through Tiger Brands? How much of your management has got to do with protecting and pretending to control information? How much of that should just be opened up in this new digital age? We need to learn different ways of working. Kevin spoke earlier about email. Volkswagen have just made the decision to switch off their email servers at night. Between 6 and 6 in the evening, you cannot send an email internally, just to try and begin to work through this issue of data overload internally. These are leadership issues and leadership decisions for the second decade of the 21st century. I started work at KPMG in Johannesburg in the early 1990s. As a young BCom graduate coming into KPMG, I was amazed at the technology that was available to me. We had a color photocopier just one floor down from my desk. We had a fax machine on every floor. It was guarded by a very scary old tunny called the fax operator. Some of you are old enough to remember the fax operator, who used to take the fax off and cut it carefully and put it in a brown envelope for you. Lovely. But it was remarkable. I had none of that technology available to me at home. And then, just a few months after I joined KPMG, they made the decision to head out and try and become one of the world's leading computer-assisted auditing companies. And they ordered 62 of the world's most advanced personal computers. The Apple SE30. Oh, what a machine. I still have one of them. I use it as a doorstop in my garage. I mean, they're complete junk at the moment. But back then, they were the greatest thing available. Those 60 computers at KPMG in Johannesburg gave KPMG more computing power than the American military at the time, I kid you not. And I was allocated one. And I would come in early and I would leave late. I spent hundreds of discretionary hours free of charge to KPMG, helping them convert the KPMG audit methodology into Excel version 1. It was jaw-droppingly brilliant. I wonder how many of those digital natives who joined Tiger last year were amazed at the technology you made available to them. Amazed might be the word, but the synonym is not jaw-dropping. It's horrified, shocked. What is this thing? How old is this software? And they go, oh, well, if I have to, at least let me load a few apps onto this thing to make it slightly more productive. Oh, I can't. I've been locked out of administrative privileges. IT, if there are any IT people in the room, I'm not getting on your case. I know your problem. I worked in IT after KPMG. Your problem is 3 weeks before delivery, they changed the spec. Idiots. And secondly, you don't have enough money. I know that. But that's still no excuse. IT are not in charge. And yet, in most companies, they are. IT are supposed to be a service agency. When did they get to make all the rules? This is becoming an HR issue. Young people will not join a company that have bad IT policies. This is becoming a sales and marketing issue because we can't get the data we need out of the IT system to service those new customers that we need. We need to give the IT department the resources that they need to take us into the 21st century properly. When did a company like yours, and I don't know your policies, I don't know your situation, so maybe you are well ahead of where most other people are. But most of my clients have somehow decided that it's okay to be a little bit out of date in technology in the middle of the digital age. Are you insane? This is where you get the competitive advantage, because this is the world that we live in. And we've only just begun. In the next 3 to 5 years, I would like you, at least once every quarter, to ask this question. What changes have we seen in technology recently that have the potential to disrupt our business? And what do we plan to do about it? I think you can keep ahead of the curve. I think you can use this to leapfrog your competitors. But it's going to take effort and energy and consistent focus for at least the rest of this decade. Technology. Now, I've used half my time to talk about technology because I think half of what you're facing has got to do with technology. But there are 4 other disruptive trends, so buckle your seatbelts. Let's have a look at them as well. The I in the TIDES of change stands for institutional change. Now, what I mean by institutional change is the pillars or the structures of society or our institutions. Those are from big institutions like countries and multinational corporations, right the way down to small and insignificant institutions like a primary school or the Liverpool Football Club or your family. I don't know of any institution in the world that is not undergoing deep structural change right now. And that's affecting industries like yours and companies like yours. So let's just focus in on the business aspects of this. This is probably one of my favorite quotes from a great book written a few years ago that just reminds us that in times of turbulence, it's very easy for the market leaders like yourselves to not see the disruptive change coming to your industry. You know, still, my favorite one there is Google. Didn't come from Yellow Pages. Yellow Pages is still one of the most powerful brands in search, even though you probably haven't used one in about 5 years. And they still haven't quite worked out where they fit in the Google, Bing world. What a loss of such a great brand. What disruptions might be coming to the rules for success and failure in your industry? That's really the heart of institutional change. The rules for success and failure, the things that you've always done that have always worked. Well, I think we're at a point in history where they might stop working. And things you tried 5 years ago that didn't work might actually work now. And things you've never thought of that are coming from other industries, from young bucks in other places who are coming and sideways into your industry, who appear as if they know nothing about what you are doing, and then one morning you wake up and they've taken over. I mean, the magazines, the newspapers, the music industry. Music industry is my favorite, the only industry in the world that are currently suing their own customers. That's how much they don't know what's going on in their industry. And all because things changed. Yeah, a bit of a fun question. How many of you know where that little A is right there? It's in Illinois. There's a little town in Illinois. If you've been there, you'll know exactly where I'm going. Anybody know where it is or what it is? The town's name is normal. That's normal Illinois. I love Normal. Well, the town, Normal. Mainly because when you leave Normal, you see this most magnificent sign. Leaving Normal. Welcome to 2012. You are leaving normal. And this is a huge issue and a huge challenge for anyone in leadership and senior management positions such as yourselves. We're leaving normal regulation and legislative environments behind. That's the biggest level of change. We're leaving industry norms and rules behind. That's the second layer of change that could impact you. We're also leaving the way things are done around here. There's a way things have always been done around here, and that's changing too. I don't have to tell a South African or sub-Saharan African audience anything about this level of structural change. This is what we have lived with almost our entire lives. We're actually pretty good at it, by the way. I think we're much better at it than the Brits are. I know we've got two other speakers from the UK here. Don't tell them I said that. But I think we're much better at it because it's almost been built into us from birth. But we still have to do it. And it gets personal. The fourth level of institutional change has got to do with you and your profession. Lawyers, doctors, engineers, accountants, actuaries, vets, architects, and psychologists, all of us are selling our brain power by the hour. And what happens when computers become cleverer than we are? What happens when people don't want your professional opinion because the computer can do it better than you can? This is going to happen first to the accountants, because accountants essentially are just recording exactly what happened. You don't want an accountant to be creative, do you? And then the lawyers. The lawyers will follow just after that, because as clever as lawyers appear, and they always appear very clever because they position their desk in front of that bookcase, the bookcase of all the law books, and they're saying, you see all these books? I've got them all in here. Just tell me your problem. I will do the work of finding it. That sounds like Google to me. I'm joking, but I'm serious that lawyers will easily be replaced second on the list. And I think engineers will go as well, and so will doctors. Your GP will be replaced by a computer very soon. You think I'm joking? Imagine you've got this striking pain in your side. Yeah, this is serious stuff. Off you go to the doctor. The doctor prods a few things, listens to a few things, checks in your ears, and then what does your doctor do? Turns to the computer and goes on to netdoctor.com. Just double checking. And there's good reason for that, because your doctor went to the same university that you did. And just like me, I studied accountancy. I only had to get 50% to pass. Your doctor only got 50%. And they passed her. Doctors should have to get 100% on every exam. Which half are you happy for them not to know? Hopefully it's not this half. How many of your doctors have ever done a blood test on you? Because that's the next thing they do. How many of your doctors? Let's see, hands. You lie. Your doctor's never done a blood test. Hey? Have your doctor ever done the blood test? No. Your doctor takes blood out of your body and then does what with it? Sends it to the lab. There's the clever person with the white coat and the microscope looking down, right? No. If you believe that, you've been watching way too much CSI. There's no person in the lab, it's a machine. And Agnes, who runs the lab, only knows how to use the machine. She sticks the blood in the machine. 20 minutes later, a report comes out, and that's sent back to your doctor, who phones you and reads it to you. We don't need any of those people. You can have one of those machines in your house if you want it. I'm actually being serious. I would prefer the machine to the doctor. Which might mean that job interviews in the near future look a little bit like this. 2 decades, actually, and the last 3 or 4 years in particular, the rules for success and failure have been changing. Political, economic, corporate, social, and personal rules for success and failure are different. Different times require a different script. The question is the same question as with technology. Once a quarter, maybe twice a year, you need to sit down and ask, what rules are changing? What rules have changed? What institutional changes have we noticed recently that could disrupt our business? And what are we going to do about it? And as a personal challenge to all of you, I know we have the leadership team here. How brave are you prepared to be as a leader? To stand up and say, it isn't like that anymore, sir. We should try something different. The 0 point is a wonderful moment in time where the bold can choose a new direction. Why play it safe in 2012? So, T for technology, I for institutional change. The D is for demographics. Now, demographics has got to do with the study of people and populations, and the big news in demographics these days is, of course, the population of the world, the growing population. There's kind of the last few thousand years of human history and the number of people in the world, and, well, you can see where we're going. We just, on the 31st of October last year, according to the United Nations, we hit the 7 billion mark, and of course, we now expect that to just accelerate further. Or do we? Demographic trends are often seen as long-term trends that can be ignored when you're doing short-term planning. But we shouldn't at the moment, because some important things are happening. Let me explain. First of all, the reason that line stayed as pretty flat for 10,000 years of human history is not because there were small families. In fact, on average, through history, women have had 6 children each. I know some have had a lot more and some have had less, but on average, there were 6 children. But that balance was maintained because, unfortunately, 4 of each of those children died, and in some cases, the mother as well. And that maintained a balance. It's called the replacement rate. Pretty much population stayed static. Of course, with modern medicine and everything we've been talking about, and now for the last 150 years or so, there's been no balance. So you have 6 children, you even do something insane like that to get them to school, and somehow they all survive. And so we had this massive growth over the last 2 centuries that has taken us to the 7 billion. But we're now reaching a point of a new balance. More and more families are choosing smaller family sizes. The average around the world now is just down to below 3. And in the developed world, it's now 2 children per family. In some countries like China, it's even enforced at lower than that. So that expected growth to 15, 20, 30 billion is not going to happen. We're going to peak in around 2050 at between 9.5 and 10 billion people, possibly even lower than that. Now that's of course not happening equally all around the world. We know that Africa still has a fairly high birth rate. Africa on average at the moment is between 5 and 7 children, depending on which country you look at. But that's down from 13 or 14 children per family just 2 or 3 decades ago. In other words, Africa, although slightly behind the curve, is on exactly the same curve as the rest of the world. To put it this way, this is what the world kind of looks like at the moment. We've got 2 billion children in the world. Those are ages along the side there. So 2 billion children around the world between the ages of 0 and 15. Then 2 billion young adults, 1 billion, it's more like 1.5. Actually, to be honest, 1.5 billion people sort of in their mid-age, and then about 1 billion people with about another 500 million people over the age of 70. In fact, just to give you a statistic, more than half of all the people who have ever turned 80 are still alive. You have to hear that one again, right? Over half of all the people in the history of the world who have ever turned 80 are still alive. So what's happening now is that as those people get older and possibly don't die, they are not dying during middle age and in their youth. And again, if we push this out into the 2030s, that's what will happen. So by about 2040 or so, that's what the world will look like. We're not going to add a lot more children at the bottom. We pretty much have got as many children as we're ever going to have in the world. And we're just going to now move those people all the way through the various life stages. Now, there are two implications, especially for a company such as yours. The first is that each of those different generations that we're talking about, each of those 15, 20-year groups of people are a different generation who have different worldviews, have different expectations of life. You know this if you've got children. You know that those children in your house, although genetically related to you, might as well be aliens. They really do see the world in a very, very different way. And they're not going to grow up to become like you. You've found this with some of the 30 and 35-year-olds in this room already. You thought when they got to 35 and they got married and had kids of their own, well, then they'd settle down and they'd become like you. And they haven't. And they won't. And we need to understand these generational attitudes so that we can connect with these people in the workplace and connect with them as customers. And we also need to understand that at different life stages, people need different things as well. We're often youth obsessed. But actually, what's your product strategy for an elderly world? What's your product strategy if 30% of South Africa is over the age of 65 in 10 years' time? See, we often think of the bubble down of the young people, but that bubble's coming through. And where are your products? Where are your services? Where's your product offering? This becomes a very complex and complicated marketplace with younger generations, older generations, with different worldviews. It's not going to get any easier. Even more than that, we have to adjust our thinking around HR because these older generations are not going to retire. If you see the spelling there, they're going to retread themselves, refire themselves, retire themselves. This is not the picture of retirement. Reach 65, then go gardening, golfing, and fishing for the rest of your life. A, you can't afford it. You're going to live longer than you think. B, you don't want to. Even if you have the money, I mean, if you've worked in government, then you've got the money, so that's fine. But even if you didn't have the money, you wouldn't want to do that. And you know as well as I do, there are many people out there already, and maybe this is a better picture of this generation, who have gone on retirement, and a few months into retirement they've turned a hobby into an income-generating stream, which has become a small business. Or, maybe more likely, they've come back to their old industry. They're working mornings only at double the hourly rate, and they're consultants. You know who I'm talking about? Maybe one or two of you are who I'm talking about. We need to be thinking about a very different makeup in the world, a very different set of demographics. Maybe this is what retirement will look like in a few years' time. My mother's from Lancashire in the north of England. My mother-in-law is from Lancashire in the north of England, and she told me recently, she said, "Oh, Graeme, it's even worse than that." She said, "When I die, there's going to not even be a penny left on the table. When I die, the last check I write will be to the undertaker, and it will bounce." Another demographic issue which is of importance, especially in sub-Saharan Africa, is the issue of migration. So not only are the age splits changing, but where people stay are changing as well. We're a very mobile world at the moment. People moving from poorer countries to richer countries, from poorer areas to richer areas, from rural areas to urban areas. Last year, we became a largely urbanized world. More than half of the people in the world living in cities. It took us 10,000 years to do that. In the next 15 years, another half will move into cities. By 2025, 75% of the world will live in cities. And we know in South Africa what that might look like. This is a picture, as it happens, from Sao Paulo. But we know what cities with unemployed people or cities with rich and poor people, what that might give us in terms of issues that we have to face. But the good news alongside all of that is that we are also doing a magnificent job of bringing people out of poverty. Not as fast as we would like to, and certainly not as fast as the poor people would like it to happen, but it is happening. And we should expect 90 million more people to become middle class every year for the next 30 years. And that will affect sub-Saharan Africa. It's our turn next. This, therefore, is my favorite world map because I think this is what the world will actually look like 10 years from now. I get standing ovations for this map in Australia, by the way. They love it, as you can imagine. That's the only downside to this map, is it just gives the Australians maybe a little bit too much to think about. But I think it's the map you should have on your wall in your office. I'd love to suggest you put it up at head office so that it reminds us what's going on. You see, the center of the world's attention is not the Atlantic anymore, with Europe and America dominating. It has, over the last few years, moved to the Pacific, with China and Southeast Asia and America still dominating. But I think if we push ourselves 20 years into the future, that movement will continue into the Indian Ocean. I am a firm believer that 20 years from now, sub-Saharan Africa will be where Southeast Asia is today. Because where Southeast Asia was just 25 years ago is where sub-Saharan Africa is now. Politically, economically, socially, natural resources. It's almost a perfect match to Southeast Asia 25 years ago. And look where they are today. That's one of the reasons, by the way, that my family and I have made the decision to move back to South Africa at the end of this year, because we truly believe that this is where the action will be, sub-Saharan Africa, for the next 20 years. Why try go into China? Everybody else is trying to get in there. Why focus on Southeast Asia? It's just the new thing, but everybody knows about it already. Why not focus your attention on sub-Saharan Africa, the dark continent? Be the brave ones to take a lead there. Now, I know you do, so this is a message that I take all around the world, and I hope that people are beginning to look more at sub-Saharan Africa, at investment and growth. You're already here. This is the last frontier of human growth. It's where we will see middle class emerging faster than anywhere else in the world. And your products are perfectly placed to take advantage of the market. It's not an easy market, but I think it's the most exciting market on the planet. So demographics. What changes in demography are likely to impact your business in the next few years? And how should you respond? Technology, institutional change, demographics. The E stands for the environment. Now, I know that you take this very, very seriously, so I'm not going to spend too long on this. Not, and I need you to understand this, not because it's unimportant, and not because I don't think it's important, but just because I know this is already well on your agenda. We know the headline news, the world is warming up. This is the last 150 years of temperature readings. I know some of you might be a little bit skeptical about this. That's fine. There is medicine for that. No, seriously, the science is in, okay? The world is warming up, and what we do as human beings is contributing to that warmth. If you don't believe the science, there are alternative proofs. I don't know how you can argue with this graph, for example. And by the way, I'm happy to chat about it at lunch. You show me yours first. But actually, it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter whether I'm right and you're wrong, or you're right and I'm wrong. The governments of the world, just in Durban in December, have made the decisions that they are going to deal with these issues. They are going to tax you, put legislation on you, and it's coming to South Africa and coming quickly. So we know this, and we know we have to deal with it. But it isn't just global warming. That's too easy to just say, oh, it's just about climate change. It's also about all our natural resources. Water, I think, being the most significant one around the world. But it's about pollution and what your factories do, of course. It's about food and the food availability around the world. It's about overfishing. It's about dead spots in the ocean. It's about pandemics. Extremely drug-resistant tuberculosis scares the hell out of me, as it should everybody. But mainly it's about water and about our response to it. Now, as I say, I'm not going to say more about it. I know you know these things and talk about them regularly. So all I'm going to do, there's a website. If you're taking notes, just jot that website down. By the way, this whole presentation will be available to you free of charge to download, so you can get all of this information again. But my team have put a research paper together called 9 Business Reasons to Take Green Issues Seriously. There's no pictures of drowning polar bears, no Greenpeace logos. Not that there's anything wrong with Greenpeace, but until we see this as a business issue and a business opportunity, I don't think we'll take it anywhere near seriously enough. So, as I say, not too much more to say about that, except to just say the question is the same. What changes in environmental issues, what green issues are emerging and might disrupt your business, and how should you respond? Don't try and be the last company in your industry to get up to minimum standard. Take the bold move of setting the standards in your industry, making it difficult for other people to follow in where you lead, and create barriers to entry. I think you will be well rewarded by a new generation of ethical consumers who take these issues very, very seriously. Finally then, in the last few minutes, the S in the tides of change. Technology, institutional change, demographics, the environment, and finally we get to, well, I need to be a bit honest with you here. I wanted the word values. That's the word I'm really aiming at. In every acronym, there's always a letter that kind of have to druk in, you know? And this is my one. The only word I could come up with as a good acronym with a V in it was the divot of change. And it didn't kind of have the same ring to it as the tidal wave of change crashing on your shores. So excuse me if we sneak in the S for social values. What I mean by values is your expectations of what is normal. Your view of what is a normal world. In a sense, this is not a fifth trend. This is just a summary of what I've said in the last 55 minutes. Because if all the other things we've talked about are even half true, it must be obvious to you that how we view the world and what normal is for us, well, that must have changed as well. And like I said right at the beginning, the problem that we face right now, the challenge, the opportunity that we face right now, is that there is no new normal emerging. I mean, what is a normal career? You work for Tiger Brands for 25 years or you work for them for 3 years? Which is normal? We can't use those words anymore. It doesn't matter anymore. What does a normal family look like? Any of those families look normal to you? Statistically, the one in the top right-hand corner is the most normal. More than half of all marriages end in divorce, and there are blended families, many represented in this room. I was stopped a few months ago. I was speaking at a school, and we got to this point in the presentation, and a 16 or 17-year-old boy put up his hand. He said, Graeme, please, I have to ask you a question. I said, okay. He said, well, is it okay for me to date my father's ex-wife's step-husband's stepdaughter? No, not step-husband, my father's ex-wife's new husband's stepdaughter. I said, I don't even know what you're asking me. What is this? He said, no. Technically, she's my sister. but she's hot. The point is, the old rules said you're not allowed to marry your sister. Why? It's for genetics. We don't want inbreeding. You know, the Graaff-Reinett's okay, just all on its own. Sorry. But these two kids, although brother and sister, were as genetically far apart as any two individuals are possible to be. Maybe the old rules, all the old rules, are wrong. What does a normal woman look like? I think one of the big revolutions about to take place is not the revolution of getting more women into the workplace. Well done, ladies. You've actually done a good job. South Africa's pretty good at this globally. But around the world, women now are half of the workforce. I know it's not a big victory because you don't earn as much money and you don't get into the leadership positions. So there's a lot of work to do there. But I think that's not the revolution. The revolution is not about getting more women into leadership, just like it's not about getting more black people into leadership. You see, because if all you're doing is ticking off the numbers, the danger is this, and I want to be quite respectful, and hopefully you'll understand my point. Remember, I have 3 daughters, a wife, and the dog we have at home only used to be a man. I'm the only guy in my house. So I want to try and get this. But here's my point. Many women who have made it to the top of their industries have done so by acting like men. There's no disrespect to them. They understand that it's still a man's world, played with man's rules, men's games. And they can compete, and they have, and well done to them. But that's not helpful for a company. It's not helpful to have a whole lot of black people on your board who think and act like white middle-class, middle-aged men. I'm not saying that's what's happening in your company. I'm just saying there's a danger if we're just ticking boxes. What we need and what South Africa truly can offer is real diversity. Not zoo diversity, where we've got all the animals nicely, neatly locked up in their cages and they're all separate from each other. We need wild diversity like we have in the game park just behind us here. Sometimes wild animals eat each other. Have you heard about that? It's not nice and sanitized and neat. And sometimes you do have to have differences of opinion, because that's what builds resilience in a company. That's what is the basis of true innovation, when we really see the world very differently and then listen to each other. That's what I think is going to happen in the new normal. That's social values at work. And what does a normal day look like? We can bring it down right to this level. Work-life balance and all of those good things. These are conversations we've had before. New normals around teams, that we don't need all the people in the room. We can have virtual teams. You can go onto websites, I don't know if you know websites like Elance, where you can go on and just hire people at a digital distance. I do this all the time. So for example, if we had recorded this presentation and I wanted to give you a transcript of it, typed out, I could just take the recording, go to Elance, say I have a 1 hour and a few minute presentation that needs converting into Word document, and who will do it for me? And I need it done, by Friday morning. And on past record, it would cost me about 200 Rand and would be done by tomorrow night. Now, you can get people to do your PowerPoint presentations for you, to work out mistakes in Excel spreadsheets, to analyze your numbers, to do all sorts of things for you. We have to think differently about this world. But just in case you think that I'm only here to talk about technology and to say technology will solve everything, it is still a high-touch world, even though it is a high-tech world at the same time. In our social values, we don't want this to happen. So what changes in social values? What changes in social values have the potential to disrupt your business, to change your customers, to change your staff, to change you? And how will you respond? So there we have them, the TIDES of change. An overview. I've taken just a few more minutes than the hour I was allocated, but even in that time, we can do nothing more than just overview these things. I hope that you take them. I hope that you take them to your teams. Allocate one of these trends to each of your top team members, and then get together once a quarter and talk them through. Have a conversation. Watch the horizon. Each one of these trends is big enough to change your business substantially, and all 5 of them are intersecting at the same time as we speak. These are fascinating and exciting and scary times to be a leader as we navigate this change. But the good news is that it's not just the things we don't know about that are going to upset us. In fact, I don't think it's those things at all. If you keep an eye on these 5 trends, you'll be able to see what's coming. And by the way, it's not just because you need lunch that you have to read that 3 times. It's Mark Twain. You just have to read it 3 times. It's not the things we don't know about that are going to get us into trouble. We can watch the tides of change and watch them coming and respond to them. It's yesterday's logic that is your biggest danger now. It's the things you think you know for sure about what will make you successful as a company that are likely to trip you up right now. Set your sails for change, because the barometer is telling us that now is the time. It is the 0 point, the moment of decision for the future, and it's up to you to make those choices. I said that all of this will be available to you. I'll make sure we get it to the conference team. If you can't wait, you might want to just pop onto my websites, have a look. Just the one at the top will give you links to everything that you need, or just search for my name, you'll find me. Otherwise, I'm going to be here for lunch and a little bit of this afternoon, and we can have some conversations or engage in the digital world at some stage. But thank you so much. Thank you, Peter. Thank you for the conference team for having me. I hope this has been helpful and will set you up as you think over the next few days about what your future can be. I'm excited, and I hope you are too. Thank you.
Thanks, Graeme.